Concept art shows numerous designs of Treecko resembling real-world geckos. Grovyle was the inspiration for the naming of Aniphene Grovyle, a species of spider. The species name was chosen in reference to both Grovyle and the discovered spider being found in the forest. Mega Sceptile has the highest base special attack and base stat total of all grass-type Pokémon, as well as the highest base speed stat of all dragon-type Pokémon. Concept art from Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire portrays a different Torchic design with large floppy ears and a flame-shaped marking on the back of its head. Combusken begins a tradition of firefighting type starter Pokémon evolutions that persisted through generations 4 and 5. Pre-alpha sketch depicts an unused Pokémon with the traits of both Blaziken and Latias. Likewise, Mega Blaziken's ears appear similar to those in the pre-alpha sketch of Torchic. Mudkip and Pelipper were featured in a music video as part of the Project Voltage collaboration with Krypton Future Media. In the video, Mudkip soars the skies in Pelipper's beak, wondering about their approaching evolution. And I've never liked a Pelipper until that one. Marshtomp and its evolved form Swampert are the only starter Pokémon to have a 4x weakness against another starter Pokémon type, Grass. Swampert has the highest base stat total of any fully evolved starter Pokémon because he is the undisputed king of not just starters, but of all Pokémon. Poochyena has the lowest base stat total of all dark-type Pokémon. Early artwork, including Ken Sugimori's official art and some TCG art, shows Mightyena with a black nose instead of a red nose, and Mightyena in its pre-evolved form share their category with Dreadnought. They are all known as the Bite Pokémon. A shiny Zigzagoon was distributed to Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire via an interactive demo to patch the berry glitch. Due to this being available for over 3 years in North America, Zigzagoon has the honour of having the longest event. Minun is the only Pokémon that can use the Mix Elixir in Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. Wurmple is the only Pokémon whose evolution is directly influenced by its personality value. Pokémon whose evolution are influenced by their gender are also evolved based on their personality value, although unlike Wurmple, their determined evolution can be known in advance. Silcoon and Cascoon have exactly the same type, base stats, moveset, and shape, making them nearly identical. Beautifly shares its category with Butterfree. They are both known as the Butterfly Pokémon. Cascoon is the only bug-type cocoon-based Pokémon whose defense stat does not decrease upon evolution. Dustox shares its category with Venomoth. They are both known as the Poison Moth Pokémon. Seedot is tied with Bellsprout and Sunkern for the lowest base special defense stat of all grass-type Pokémon. Despite several of Nuzleaf's Pokédex entries stating that it uses the leaf on its head as a flute, Nuzleaf has never been able to learn the move Grass Whistle. Shifteree's evolutionary line can be seen as a counterpart to Ludicolo's family. All members of their respective families are part grass type. They first evolve at level 14. A respective evolution stone is used to reach the final stage. Both of them are version exclusive Pokemon between Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, and both are based on yokai. Shifteree's family is based on the Tengu, and Ludicolo's family is based on the Kappa. Taillow has exactly the same base stats as Wingull, with only their attack and special attack swapped. The only thing of note about Swellow is that its German name Schwalboss means swallow boss. Surskit can be seen as a counterpart to Dewpider. Both share the bug and water types and the same base stat total of 269. Both evolve at the same level, and both can be found at Brooklet Hill in Pokemon Sun and Moon, taking the place of the other depending on the time, with Surskit being found during the night and Dewpider in the day. Of all changes to base stat totals, Masquerain received the largest increase at 40 in Generation 7. Lotad is tied with Sunkern and Bramblin for having the lowest base defense of all grass-type Pokemon. Lombroy's evolutionary family have unique attributes, one of which includes that they are the only Pokemon that can have the ability Rain Dish without it being their hidden ability. Ludicolo is one of the few Pokemon whose official artwork depicts the female form. Wingull is one of the 14 Pokemon that one could collect foreign Pokédex entries for in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Pelipper is tied with Gyarados as the most common Pokemon found amongst gym leaders, being used by 7 of them. And Pelipper shares its category with Ducklet. They are both known as the Water Bird Pokemon. Ralts' Pokemon Trozei sprite is the only one where its eyes are visible. In Pokemon X and Y, Pokemon Colosseum, and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, you can see them if you were to view Ralts from below in the Pokédex/Trainer memo. However, this is not a sprite. Kirlia and its evolutionary relatives are the only Pokemon that are in both the amorphous and human-like egg groups. The trophy descriptions for Gardevoir in both Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS/Wii U point out the fact that Gardevoir can be both genders, despite sporting a feminine-looking design. This is never brought up in any other Pokemon-related media. Shroomish and its evolved form share the same category with Paras, Parasect, Fungus, and Amoonguss. They are all known as the Mushroom Pokemon. All 6 Pokemon also share a common move, Spore, and ability, Effect Spore. In Pokemon Go, they all give more Stardust than most other Pokemon upon capture. In Generation 4, Breloom can learn False Swipe via breeding, but not via TM, and in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Breloom can learn Toxic via the move relearner, but not via TM. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Slakoth, despite being programmed to spawn in South Province Area 3, will not do so due to the lack of appropriate trees in the area. Vigoroth's evolutionary line goes through 3 stages of energy, where Slakoth is lazy, Vigoroth becomes extraordinarily energetic, and later slacking becomes lazy again. This may be a reference to the Sphinx's riddle, in which the baby crawls on 4 legs, the adult has the most energy and walks on 2 legs, and the old man walks on 3 legs, one of which is a cane. In the case of slacking, 2 legs and an arm touch the ground in its most preferable position. Slacking has the highest base stat total of any non-mythical, legendary, or mega evolution. Nincada is the only Pokemon that evolves into 2 Pokemon at once, and Nincada is the only Pokemon to have a higher base stat total than its evolved form, as it has 30 more base stat points than Shedinja. Ninjask has the highest base speed stat of all Bug-type and Flying-type Pokemon, as well as all non-legendary and non-mythical Pokemon. Shedinja has so much trivia, so I highly recommend checking it all out on Bulbapedia, but my favourite is Shedinja inherits the same game of origin, personality value, IVs, EVs, OT, trainer ID number and secret ID number and Met location as the Nincada that shed it. It also inherits the Pokérus if the Nincada had it. Among other things, due to keeping the same game of origin, personality value, and trainer and secret ID numbers, Shedinja will be shiny if, and only if, the Nincada was shiny. Whismur and its evolution Loudred were designed by Takeo Uno. Loudred's Korean name roughly translates to Rage Dinosaur, which I believe is perfect. Consequently, Exploud's Korean name roughly translates to Explosive Sound Dragon, and Exploud can learn the most sound-based moves of any Pokemon, with 11. Makuhita is the only Pokemon to be turned into a Shadow Pokemon in both Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD outside of Japan, though several other Pokemon within the same evolutionary family are turned into Shadow Pokemon in both games, such as Ariados in Colosseum and Spinarak in XD. Each of Hariyama's base stats is exactly double those of its pre-evolution Makuhita, and Hariyama has a higher catch rate than its pre-evolution. Polkadots are known in Japan as Mizutama, literally meaning water balls. This might explain why Azurill is known as the Polkadot Pokemon. This name also reflects the way Azurill is indirectly related with water. And prior to Generation 6, because Azurill's gender ratio does not match that of its evolved forms, and its evolution is not dependent on gender, being female 75% of the time, while Marill and Azumarill are female only 50% of the time, 1 out of 3 female Azurill evolves into a male Marill, depending on its personality value. Azurill's the only Pokemon to do this. From Generation 6 on, Azurill retains its gender upon evolving, despite the gender ratios still differing. When wild Nosepass appear as a symbol encounter, they always face north if not disturbed. This behaviour first appeared in Pokemon Go, in which its model will always face north when displayed on the overworld map. Normally, when a player enters then exits an encounter with a wild Pokemon, that Pokemon's model will turn to face the player. However, in Nosepass's case, it will turn back to face north after a few seconds. The fluffy tail item resembles Skitty's tail. This is because the Japanese name of the item is called Eneko's tail, Eneko being the Japanese name for Skitty, and Skitty is the only Generation 3 Pokemon that evolves via Moonstone. As of Generation 8, Delcatty's EV yield, 1 HP and 1 speed, is unique, and despite Skitty and Delcatty being available in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, its former signature move Assist is still unusable as of Generation 8. Prior to the introduction of the Fairy type in Generation 6, Sableye, along with Spiritomb, had no weaknesses under normal conditions, and Mega Sableye has the lowest base speed stat of all Dark-type Pokemon. Also, Sableye seems to be the counterpart of Mawile. Both of them are version-exclusive Pokemon to Ruby and Sapphire, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Sword and Shield, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Both also have Mega Evolved forms and the same base stat totals, as well as HP and speed. Since Mawile's back faces its opponents in battle, it uniquely uses its back sprite in Pokemon musicals, and in the 1.0 release of the English version of Pokemon Ruby, Mawile's Pokédex entry incorrectly spells its name twice as Mawile with an H, not Mawile. This typo was corrected in version 1.1. Aron unfortunately does not possess any trivia that I could find, but interestingly, its Japanese name Kokodora may include the word dragon, because Aron is actually based on dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are dragons in Pokemon. Lairon is a good Pokemon under the use of Eviolite because it takes its already impressive base 140 defense stat and makes it 210, which would make it go from the joint 13th highest base defense stat to the 4th highest base defense stat, ignoring repeats. Of all the Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, Aggron is the only dual type Pokemon that becomes single type upon Mega Evolving. And Mega Aggron is tied with Mega Steelix for the highest base defense stat of all Steel-type Pokemon. Meditite's normal and shiny colorations are opposites of those of its evolution Medicham. Meditite's normal coloration is mainly blue, while its shiny coloration is mainly pink, whereas Medicham is pink and blue, respectively. Like its pre-evolved form Meditite, Medicham is one of the few Pokemon whose official art depicts the female form. In Generation 3, before the introduction of gender differences, all Meditite and Medicham had the appearance of a female, regardless of gender. In English, the category Lightning Pokemon is shared by Electrike and Jolteon. In Japanese, Electrike has the category Inazuma Pokemon, which means Lightning Pokemon, while Jolteon has the category Kaminari Pokemon, which also means Lightning Pokemon. Mega Manectric is the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 575, and Manectric's snout resembles a crocodile clip. Plusle shares its category with its partner Minun. They are both known as the cheering Pokemon. Plusle and Minun share the same base stat total, although the stat distribution is different, with Plusle being more offense oriented and Minun being more defense oriented. And in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, there are several files for unused playable characters. One of these files is named pra_my, leading some players to speculate that Plusle and Minun were considered to appear as a tag team like the Ice Climbers. Now for a couple of Minun specific facts. Minun's first major appearance in the anime was in episode 312, the same number as its position in the National Pokédex. An unused text in Pokemon Colosseum suggests that a Shadow Minun was going to appear in the game. Volbeat and Illumise share their category. They're both known as the Firefly Pokemon. And Volbeat and Illumise are the only Bug-type Pokemon in the human-like egg group. No other Pokemon have the same dual egg group as Volbeat and Illumise, which is Bug and human-like. Roselia is the only Pokemon to receive both a pre-evolved form and an evolved form in the same generation outside of its debut generation. Roselia and its evolved form are the only Poison-type Pokemon in the Fairy Egg group, and in 2007, employees of Nintendo of America put Heracross up on the global trade station for a Japanese Roselia. Gulpin can be seen as a parallel to Baltoy. Both of them are Generation 3 Pokemon. Gulpin is exclusive to Pokemon Soul Silver, while Baltoy is exclusive to Pokemon Heart Gold. Both Pokemon are found in a massive outbreak in the same locations in their respective versions. Additionally, both can be snagged as Shadow Pokemon in Pokemon XD at the Cypher Lab, with both Pokemon having the same Shadow move, Shadow Blitz. And the illustrator of Pokemon Adventures, Satoshi Yamamoto, uses Swalot to represent himself in the volume's comment boxes. Carvana's evolutionary line may be considered a counterpart of Nummel's evolutionary line. Both of them are dual-type Pokemon. Both lines have identical base stat totals per evolutionary stage. Both of their final evolutions are used by Team Aqua Leader Archie and Team Magma Leader Maxie respectively, and both of their final evolutions can Mega Evolve. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, if a player surfs on a Sharpedo, it will have its own model, and it can surf twice as fast as other Pokemon. However, it is impossible to fish while surfing on a Sharpedo, with the game stating, "It's too risky to let go now." An NPC on Route 124 refers to this as speed surfing, if the player admits ignorance to their question. Despite being found as an overworld spawn in the Frigid Sea, Wailmer is not in the Crown Tundra Pokédex. It's the only Pokemon that can be found through random encounters in the Crown Tundra to not appear in this Pokédex. Wailord is the only Pokemon in Pokemon Rangers Shadows of Almia that doesn't need to be captured to be added to the browser. Its browser entry explains that it is too big to capture. Nummel's evolutionary line may be considered a counterpart of Carvana's evolutionary line. Both of them are dual-type Pokemon, both lines have identical base stat totals per evolutionary stage, both of their final evolutions are used by Team Magma Leader Maxi and Team Aqua Leader Archie, respectively, and both of their final evolutions can Mega Evolve. Camerupt's Pokedex entries for Emerald, Heart Gold and Soul Silver say that the volcanoes on its back erupt every 10 years. However, its Pokedex entries from Sapphire, Fire Red, Leaf Green and Alpha Sapphire, as well as dialogue from the Mystery Dungeon series, claim that they erupt whenever it is angry, which is also shown in the anime. Torkoal is tied with Slugma, Litwick and Mega Camerupt for the lowest base speed stat of all Fire-type Pokemon. And Torkoal shares its category with Roly-Coly, Carkol and Colossal. They are all known as the Coal Pokemon. Despite Pokedex entries saying that its pearl comes from a Clown Pearl, a shiny Spoink's pearl is grey, but a shiny Clown Pearl's pearl is gold. Grumpig and its pre-evolution seem to be based on the biblical phrase, "Neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you," from Matthew 7:6. The pearls were supposed to represent wisdom given to an audience who would not appreciate the teachings. Grumpig and Spoink appear to instead use those pearls of wisdom to enhance their psychic powers. Like Whirlipede, its base stat total of 360 might be based on the fact that it usually spins in circles, which are 360 degrees. Spinder's Pokemon Sun Pokedex entry states that Spinder believe they walk in straight lines, oblivious to their teetering gait. However, in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, an NPC Spinder tells the player, "When I walk, I always totter," clearly being aware of this trait. Trapinch's base attack stat is higher than that of its evolved form and is the same as that of its final evolved form. That may be a reference to the fact that antlion larvae are more aggressive and predatory than their adult stages. Vibrava is the only Pokemon to gain the Dragon type upon evolution and still be able to evolve. And in Pokemon Colosseum, Vibrava is the only Dragon type Pokemon that can be snagged, although Altaria is available upon snagging and evolving Swablu. According to Ken Sugimori in his interview in the April 2015 issue of Nintendo Dream magazine, Flygon was intended to get a Mega Evolution in Pokemon X and Y, but the idea was later dropped due to him experiencing an artist's block. Cacnea has no egg moves in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet prior to version 2.0.1. This was presumably unintentional as it regained them in said version. The same situation occurred with Luvdisc and Alolan Grimer. Not counting the Porygon line, Jynx and Kadabra, which all have legal or controversial issues attached, Cacturne is the only Pokemon from the first 3 generations that hasn't appeared in the movie or animes since Pokemon the series Ruby and Sapphire. Swablu is the only normal type Pokemon that evolves into a Dragon type Pokemon. No other Pokemon has the same type combination as Mega Altaria, and Mega Altaria is also the only Mega Evolved Pokemon with a unique type combination. Altaria and the Applin family require only 600,000 experience points to reach level 100, the least of all Dragon-type Pokemon. Zangoose and its rival Seviper share several characteristics, such as being in the Field Egg group, residing in the same friend area, and being the only 2 Pokemon with a base stat total of 458. Zangoose and Seviper also have the exact opposite experience group, with Zangoose being in the Erratic group and Seviper being in the Fluctuating group. In an infamous Pokemon Trainer's Choice, Seviper was incorrectly claimed to be an evolved form of Arbok, and Seviper is the only pure Poison-type Pokemon to not have an evolutionary relative. 2 of Seviper's Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team phrases mention its hatred for Zangoose. Between 51 and 100% HP, Seviper will say, "Go with Zangoose? Sorry, I don't do that." And when he levels up, he'll say, "There, I leveled up. I hate losing to Zangoose." Truly a dedicated hater. In the items section of the Diamond and Pearl official guidebook, Lunatone's name is misspelled as Lunastone. Solrock and Lunatone have nearly identical base stats, with only the physical and special stats switched, and they both share the same category of the Meteorite Pokemon. Barboach and its evolved form are the only dual-type water-ground Pokemon who are not in the Water 1 egg group. They're also the only ground-type Pokemon who are in the Water 2 egg group. Whiscash's Chinese name translates roughly to Catfish King, so be careful on those dating sites. You might be talking to a Whiscash. Corphish can be found in the Hoenn region, but its Pokedex entries claim it came from another region overseas. This would make it the first exotic species in the Pokemon world. And Crawdont's French name, Colomard, is a combination of Omard, which means lobster, and colossal or kernel, so I shall be calling Crawdont Colonel Lobster for the rest of time now. No other Pokemon has the same type combination as Baltoy in its evolution, and despite being a gender unknown Pokemon, Baltoy's Pokepark pad entry in Pokepark Wii Pikachu's Adventure refers to it using masculine pronouns. The same is true for Claydol. And the symbols on Claydol's chest and back resemble the Q form of Unknown. Before Generation 8, the Lilip family had only been obtainable with their hidden ability in the Pokemon Dream World. Due to the closure of the Pokemon Global Link, the Lilip family could no longer be obtained with their hidden ability except through breeding. The Lilip family's hidden ability can currently be obtained via max raid battles or the ability patch. Cradily is the only Pokemon with Pokeathlon stats where each one is a different level, and Cradily and its pre-evolved form Lilip are the only grass-type Pokemon that belong in the Water 3 egg group. Anorith and its evolved form are the only Pokemon with the Swift Swim ability that are also weak to water. Due to an error, Armaldo has the move Slash in its moveset twice in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and Pokemon Sun and Moon, once at level 25 and again at level 34. It was later fixed in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, with Bug Bite replacing Slash at level 25 to match what its pre-evolution learns. The probability of finding a water tile with Feebas on Route 119 is approximately 1 in 73, with 6 possible fishing spots on 436 water tiles. In Mount Coronet, it is 1 in 132, with 4 possible fishing spots on 528 water tiles. If the player reels in one Pokemon in every tile, the chance of passing every Feebas tile without reeling in a single Feebas is 1 in 64 on Route 119, while in Mount Coronet, it is 1 in 16. Exclusively in Japanese Platinum, a shiny female Milotic has blue antennas in its front sprite due to a colouring error. This is corrected in every other version of Platinum. This makes Milotic the only Pokemon to have a gender difference exclusive to its shiny form. In Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time, Darkness and Sky, Castform has a body size of 4, despite it being a body size 1 in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, and having the same in-game sprite in Explorers of Time and Explorers of Darkness. This is due to all 4 forms of Castform sprites being loaded into the game's memory at once, meaning that it is the equivalent of 4 Pokemon with a body size of 1 each in terms of memory. Kecleon is the hardest Pokemon to recruit in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, with a base recruit rate of negative 33.9%. It can only be recruited if the player is level 90 or higher, and if they are holding a friend bow. Even after all this, Kecleon's recruit rate is only 0.1%. Requirements change in Explorers of Time, Explorers of Darkness and Explorers of Sky. The player must instead be at level 99 while holding a golden mask with the Fast Friend IQ skill. These requirements come in conjunction with its base recruit rate decreasing to negative 49.5%. Shuppet can be seen as a parallel to Duskull. Both are Generation 3 Ghost-type Pokemon, both evolve into their final form starting at level 37, and both also have the same base stat total. Despite Bayonet's zipper needing to stay closed in order to conserve energy, Bayonet's Pokemon Ami animation shows it unzipping and opening its mouth in order to smile or eat, and Mega Bayonet has the highest base attack stat of all Ghost-type Pokemon. Duskull, along with Shedinja, Galarian Yamask and Greavard, has the lowest base special attack stat of all Ghost-type Pokemon. Dusclops can be seen as a parallel to Bayonet. Both are Generation 3 Ghost-type Pokemon that evolved from their pre-evolved forms at level 37. Both also have the same base stat total. Wild Dusclops are exclusive to Pokemon Ruby, and Wild Bayonet are exclusive to Pokemon Sapphire. Out of all the Pokemon available in Generation 4, Tropius is the only one that is exclusive to Platinum, though it can also be obtained in Heart Gold and Soul Silver via the Pokewalker. And Tropius was the first Pokemon to be distributed in a Cherish Ball, with the Shokutan Tropius distribution. Chimecho's index number is the very last in the Generation 3 games, excluding glitch Pokemon and unowned forms, except in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, in which this trait belongs to Munchlax. And in Generation 7, Chimecho received a stat boost of 30 points, with 10 points added to its HP, Defense and Special Defense. Absol's location in many games support its description of appearing where disasters occur. In Diamond and Pearl, Absol appears on Route 213, which is close to Lake Valor, which was drained by Team Galactic. In Platinum, Absol appears on Mount Coronet in places that one can first access when heading to the Spear Pillar before Giratina is released by Team Galactic. In Black and White, Absol can be found at the Giant Chasm, a place where disasters are said to befall trainers, and Route 13, 13 being known as an unlucky number. Sure enough, 2 years later, the Giant Chasm is where Team Plasma makes its stand. In Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Absol can be found in Tapu Village, which was destroyed years earlier by Tapu Bulu. In Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, Absol can be found in the Ultru building and Ultru Tower, from which Team Dimsun plans to take control of all Pokemon in the region. In Generation 3, Wailmer is the only baby Pokemon found in the wild in the games, on Mirage Island. Oddly, in Generation 4, Wailmer is the only baby Pokemon that cannot be found in the wild. And Wailmer is one of the few Generation 3 Pokemon who made a debut before Pokemon the series Ruby and Sapphire. Super Smash Bros. Brawl's Snorunt trophy incorrectly claims that only male Snorunt evolve into Glalie. And although the Ice type has existed since the first generation of Pokemon, Snorunt is the first pure Ice type in the Pokédex, despite having debuted in the third generation. Glalie shares all of its base stats with Phione, and Glalie and its evolutionary relatives are the only Ice-type Pokemon in the Fairy Egg group. Other than normal Ice, Spheal's typing of Water Ice has the least resistances of any dual type in the game, with only 2. The 2 being Water and Ice. Celio has no facts, so here's its Pokemon Emerald animated sprite. With the ability Thick Fat, Walrein and its evolutionary relatives can have an 8 times resistance to ice. This makes it the only evolutionary line where all of its members can have a triple resistance to a type under normal battle circumstances. The only other Pokemon that can have a triple resistance is Dugong, as it shares the same type and ability as Walrein's evolutionary line. Clamperl is the only Pokemon that evolves by trade holding one of 2 different items. Despite being a pure Water-type Pokemon, Huntail bears a Dark-type Pokeassist in Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, and despite being a pure Water-type Pokemon, Gorbis bears a Psychic-type Pokeassist in Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia. Relicanth shares many similarities with fossil Pokemon, in the sense that it is also part Rock-type, has a gender ratio of 7 males to 1 female, and it's referred to as an ancient Pokemon in some Pokedex entries. And Relicanth is one of the 2 Pokemon left out of the Hoenn Pokérap. The other is Zigzagoon. Luvdisc has no egg moves in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet prior to version 2.0.1. This was presumably unintentional as it regained them in said version. The same situation occurred with Cacnea and Alolan Grimer, and its gold shiny may be a reference to the saying, a heart of gold. Bagon is tied with Dreepy for the lowest base special defense stat of all Dragon-type Pokemon. From Generations 4 through Generation 7, Shelgon can learn Iron Defense via Move Tutor, but its evolved form can't. Salamence is the only pseudo-legendary Pokemon who's not known to be owned by a member of the current Masters 8 in Pokemon Journeys, the series. Beldum, along with its evolved forms, are the only non-legendary Pokemon to have a catch rate of 3, which is the lowest in existence. Although it's said that Metang is made up of 2 Beldum, this is never shown in any Pokemon media, though it's mentioned in the Pokédex. In Saved by the Beldum, the only anime episode to date to show a Beldum evolution, when Morrison's Beldum evolves into Metang, it creates another Beldum and newly developed main body to evolve, instead of fusing with another Beldum. Despite this, in the Synchronicity test, the Pokédex claims that Metang is created from the union of 2 Beldum. Metagross is also the only pseudo-legendary Pokemon that, in its debut generation, had no members of its evolutionary line able to be encountered in the wild. Regirock's in-game footprint resembles a Scarabaeus sacer, a real-life insect that was considered sacred by ancient Egyptians. And Regirock's base attack and special attack, as well as defense and special defense, are the reverse of Regice's. Also, Regirock is the first legendary Pokemon to have been featured as a court Pokemon in the anime. In the international versions of Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, there is an unobtainable Regice doll programmed into the game. It was unlockable with the Japan-exclusive Regidolls Decoration Set e-reader card, and Regice has the highest base special defense stat of all Ice-type Pokemon. Registeel is the only legendary giant to not have one of its base stats reach 200, and to have base attack and special attack stats that are not multiples of 10. And Registeel is tied with Probopass for the highest base special defense stat of all Steel-type Pokemon. Registeel also shares both its standard and hidden abilities with the Beldum evolutionary family. Latias is the last Generation 3 Pokemon to appear in a main series anime episode, debuting in The Road Most Traveled, and Latios and its counterpart Latias may be loosely based on the Chinese philosophical concept of yin and yang. They also share the same category of the Eon Pokemon. In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, a Kyogre that knows Surf will allow the player to surf more quickly than with other Pokemon, except for Sharpedo. This action has its own animation and larger hitbox. Additionally, a Kyogre that knows Dive will allow the player to avoid underwater trainer battles. This action also has its own animation and a larger hitbox. On the DVD cover of Jirachi Wishmaker, a normal Groudon is depicted, despite the Groudon in the film not being an actual Groudon. And as a possible reference to Primal Groudon, when Groudon is caught in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it will have the Fire Terror type. Also, Primal Groudon has the highest base attack stat and base stat total of all Ground and Fire type Pokemon. Mega Rayquaza is tied with Mewtwo's Mega Evolutions for the highest base stat total of all Pokemon, with 780. Excluding non-playable Eternamax Eternatus. This makes it the only Pokemon with a base stat total above 720 that doesn't require a specific held item. And also, Rayquaza was designed by Hironobu Yoshida, who also designed Deoxys, Magmortar, Darkrai, Celebi, Wobbuffet and Dunsparce. Jirachi was the first mythical Pokemon to have a signature move. This trend has continued with every mythical Pokemon introduced since. And in the Pokemon Adventures manga, Team Aqua leader Archie uses Jirachi's power to create a Kyogre monster, whereas in the anime movie Jirachi Wishmaker, former Team Magma member Butler uses Jirachi's powers to create a Groudon monster. Deoxys was the first mythical Pokemon to not have exactly 100 points in each of its base stats. Deoxys was the first Pokemon to have its own unique battle music. Deoxys is the only Pokemon whose Japanese category name is written with characters from a foreign alphabet, being DNA. And finally, due to the cause of form change in Generation 3 being the game Deoxys is in, only Speed Form Deoxys is banned from the battle frontier, as only Speed Form Deoxys is obtainable in Emerald.